Welcome to the Princeton Flying School Podcast with Pete Rafle, Princeton Flying School Instructor Emeritus. In this episode, Pete sat down with Bill Ducharme, born in 1930 and now possibly New Jersey's oldest certified active private pilot. Pete and Bill discussed a wide range of aviation topics and shared stories regarding Bill's early flight training, his experiences here at Princeton Airport, his love of Cessna airplanes, particularly the 152s, and his continued love of aviation all the way into his 90s. This episode is an enjoyable trip down memory lane. So without any further introduction, let's join Pete Rafle and Bill Ducharme.
Good morning, everybody. This is Pete Rafle, former chief pilot of the Princeton Flying School. And I want to welcome you again to another of our podcast series. My intent has always been to interview the many interesting people who use Princeton Airport as their second home. There are lots of rich stories of aviation here to be gleaned from these wonderful people. And today I've invited Bill Ducharme to tell us of his story of aviation and how you got started with it. Bill, welcome.
Thank you, Peter. It's been a pleasure to be invited here this morning to share with you some of my love for aviation and how I got started in this wonderful world of aviation.
Yeah, you originally from Massachusetts, Worcester, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it's called Worcester, Peter.
Worcester?
Worcester, Massachusetts. I was born on January 30th, 1930 in Worcester, Mass.
And so in your early childhood, did you watch airplanes fly by? Probably a lot of biplanes and such, or faster single air, monoplanes and stuff.
Well, let me just roll back a few years, if I may, Peter,
Please.
and give you an initial insight of how aviation became part of my life. At the age of 9, this is, not too long after the Depression, terrible time, but my next door neighbor, Dick, and I started making model airplanes. And these model airplanes you still can do today. And these model airplanes are made out of balsam. So Dick and I would make these planes, and these were rubber-banded aircraft, and we would build them, fly them, crank them up and throw them off the porch, and then when we get tired of them, we would set fire to them and set them off. But we had a really wonderful time, and the idea of aviation and planes, the dynamics of flight really got into my mind and tried to understand. So down the road, Dick and I, every so often, we would take a trip to Grafton Airport. This is about 8 miles east of Worcester. So Dick and I would get on our bikes. Remember, we were just about 9 years old, 10 years old, and we'd pedal to Grafton and end up at the Grafton Airport, and we were just wowed at all these Boeing Stearmans, Taylor Crafts. And the field was all just a grass field, just a wonderland of fun. So Dick and I, dropped into the office and talked to the owner of the field, asked him what it would cost for a ride, and he told us, and that was out of our pocketbook. We didn't have that kind of money, so Dick and I decided, well, what if we built these model airplanes for you, and you could hang them up on the ceiling. And in return, you could give us a ride. So he thought about that. He says, that's a deal. So Dick and I were happy. So we pedaled back to the house, and we got a couple of kits of airplanes and built them. And 2 weeks later, Dick and I pedaled back to Grafton Airport, showed him the airplane. He was very happy. So he says, okay, guys, he says, the deal is set. Let's go for a ride in a Boeing Stearman. Now, that was the cream of the cream, right? So Dick and I, we off to the field, and this Boeing Stearman is tied down their beautiful looking bird. So the pilot put Dick and I in the front seat. We had the goggles and the helmet, strapped us in. And then this was the big event, the biggest event of our life. Dick and I sitting side by side in this Boeing Stearman. And then he started taxiing over the turf, bumping around. And then all of a sudden we got to the end of the field. He whipped it around. And then he revved it up, and on the side, and I'll always remember this, Peter, the tall grass. It was just like water, and then we could see the tall grass flowing. And then all of a sudden, he pushed the throttle forward, and we took off. And Dick and I in the front seat with our goggles on and our helmet. So that's when Dick and I, and especially I was born into aviation in that particular time. So that's how I first started. And then later on, Peter, at the same airport, after I was a little older, probably 14, 15, I went back and I started taking flying lessons. And I supported that with my paper route. And all I could take at the time was a half hour of flight time. So I did that in the tailorcraft, and my instructor was a former United States Army pilot. And that's where I started in the tailorcraft. And there wasn't a hell of a lot of room in the tailorcraft. I mean, I was a little guy, but this guy was, big. So there was togetherness there. So that's how I really, in the early days, got involved with flying. And then later on, it's time for high school and college and things of that nature, and then work. And had other ideas, other important things on my mind, and I had my career and what have you. So later in 1987, at the age of 57, I'm now living in Pennington, New Jersey. And my first thought was, where is the closest airport for flying? So my son told me, he said, there's an airport in Princeton. So I said, oh, that's fine. So I didn't pay much attention to that. But I think a couple of months later, my son bought me a certificate for introduction to flight. And he bought that from the Princeton Airport, handed that to me. And at that time, I'm still busy, but I'm 57. And I decided I'm going to take Paul up on that offer and that certificate. And I came here and started my flight lessons. And I can remember meeting Naomi, who was the head of the flight school, a well-managed school. She was very disciplined, and you had to be disciplined as well as Naomi. So I started my first flight lesson, and she assigned me to this young man. His name was Tom Joswick. Very capable, calm, forgiving, and Tom and I did some flying right from Princeton, and we'd go up to the practice area, and then then on November 14th of 1987, that was my first solo in a Cessna 152. So that's when I got started, and then with Tom Joswick, we would, fly for I forgot how many months after that. But then I had to do other things that interrupted that period. I mean, it was quite a period of flight. So and also, by the way, I want to go back just to talk a little bit about Naomi. So when it was time to take my airman's written tests, I can remember she invited me to sit in her office. They had a desk there, and that's where I took my airman's tests. And at that time, we couldn't get the results back right away, but I think it was about a week or two. I got the results back, and I got a 93 on that. So I didn't want to disappoint Naomi because she was a tough taskmaster. So that's and I went on from the, and then there was another period where I had a break, and that was probably from probably a 7 years break from flying, because now I'm in the job business. I moved to Pennington. I've got this company I'm working with. I'm traveling. So now it's 7 years later, 1994.
So you soloed.
I soloed.
You passed your written.
Passed the written.
And you've already done your cross country.
I did my did cross country, and that
you're almost finished.
Almost finished, but I know it.
But the demands of jobs, and you're traveling a lot,
yeah.
And you're not. That's not unusual. That there's a big break.
Right.
But 7 years.
Right.
The previous almost 30 years, right?
Right.
Probably from in the 40s until the 80s, almost 40 years.
Right.
Do you remember how much time you had in the tailorcraft before you stopped?
Yes, that's an interesting question, because I was getting really disappointed. But I had 10 hours in a tailorcraft, and it was a very difficult plane to land. And my judgments of that was a tail. What do you call that?
Well, it was a tailwheel airplane.
Airplane.
But it was tandem, so you weren't tandem. You were side by side.
Side by side,
right. And it's like a Piper Cub. It's long. The tailwheel is way back there, so it has. You got to be careful with the rudder.
Yeah, right.
But early on in your career, you're learning how to use rudder. So when you came back in '87 to start learning to fly a 152, it was fairly easy for you to control that airplane with.
No, it really was. I thought it'd be like that, but it was like starting all over.
Oh, okay.
Because they had a very, as I said, disciplined aviation course here.
Mm-hmm.
We used the Cessna, that little red hardcover manual of flight.
The Cessna's training manual.
Cessna training, and with Tom, he was a very sophisticated and very exact type of a pilot. So he was easy to be with, but difficult to fly with, because he was a perfectionist, which was a blessing for me. Mm-hmm. So
you took criticism well then. You were
yeah.
a good student, I think.
Having
flown with you, I know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I can remember the day that he says, "Bill, you're ready for your solo," and I can remember him getting out of the plane and me taxiing all alone down until it was time to get onto the runway and take off, and that was an awesome moment. I mean, I sort of just looked to the right, and I was all alone. There's no one in the right seat, and here I am, climbing out.
As a peak experience,
Right.
You had one as that first flight in that Stearman, and now the second big peak experience is your solo.
Correct. Yes.
And so, to being working as hard as you were to get the solo,
right,
and then have to take more time off before you could come back. So,
yes,
so
right.
what happened that brought you back after 7 years?
7 years, right? But there was always that tug to come back to flying, because I really, really was captivated by the science, the aerodynamics of flight. But that's something that I knew I was going to do, but when it was going to happen and when I would get my pilot certificate, it was going to happen. But I had to. So when I got back to the area of flying, as I say, I had a 7-year hiatus there. Then I went to Trenton Airport, Tango November, and that's where Mercer County was having a flight school, and it was like 5 minutes away from my home.
Mm-hmm.
So I investigated that, and they had numerous instructors and planes of 152s. So I started there again. So I took all my flying lessons there, and eventually eventually in 1998, that was in December of 1998, I was ready for my private pilot certificate, and the FAA instructor, examiner rather, Robert Broadwater, he signed me off, and that's when I got my private pilot certificate. And then I flew around, up to I would fly to Van Zant, I would fly to Allentown, pretty much locally. And then I came back to Princeton Airport, 39N, and Ken had this beautiful 150, Cessna 150. It was blue and white, and it was for sale. It was a cream puff. So I talked to Ken, and so he told me what the price was. I says, okay, I can afford that. So I bought that plane, and I flew that out of here for a while, and then I brought it up to Trenton Airport, Tango, November, and flew out of that airport for a couple of years, and then I brought the plane back to Princeton, and sold it back to Ken. So, but I had a wonderful time. I mean, it was nice owning your own plane, taking care of it, flying it, and learning the communications out of Mercer County Airport or Trenton Airport. So that was an experience there. And then I continued flying, and then I finally came across this gentleman by the name of Peter Rafle, and we started flying together, and introduced me to the Skyhawk 172, and flew with Peter many hours. And we also flew up to Worcester, was a dream that I always had, to the Worcester Airport. We landed there. That was a two-hour flight. We took off from Princeton, flew up the river, the Hudson River. Peter was my radio man, and we flew up to the bridge. What was the name of the bridge?
George Washington?
Yeah.
Tappan Zee?
Tappan Zee Bridge. And then from there, we shot off to Hartford, Connecticut. And from Hartford, that was into Worcester Airport. We did that in 2 hours. We stayed there for probably an hour, had lunch, jumped back in the plane, flew back for another 2 hours. And that was quite an experience to be there with Peter.
Yeah, I remember that flight very well, Bill, because it was a long flight. It was one of those things I remember. If you ever had the opportunity to ask, if you get flight following, and then ask them if they've got a ground speed on you, that was probably one of those days where they'd come back with something like, well, we've got you at 64 miles an hour over the ground.
Right.
We seem to have a headwind both directions on that flight.
Right.
As so often happens.
Right.
But so that was just a few years ago. It wasn't. I mean, it was within the last 10 years. I think we did that.
Right.
But
the thing I want to make a point here, Pete, is that, and this is for other pilots who are thinking about re-entering the flight world for aviation and also having their own plane and flying. I was 68 when I was certified by taking lessons, so I wasn't a young man. I was 68 at that time, and so for those who out there who are thinking that, well, I might be a little anxious to start taking flying lessons, I say if you have a deep interest and you love flying and you want to know more about the aerodynamics of flight, go for it. So.
Yeah, but you were a very young 68.
Well, thank you, Pete.
Okay,
Yeah.
And you're a pretty young 90-year-old too right now.
Right.
If I should say so myself. You're just a little bit ahead of me, but I think you've got a tremendous amount of energy. And have you flown recently?
The last flight, it's been, I had and you were the one who were with me. I had my BFR.
Mm-hmm.
That was in 2019, so I'm up almost due for another one. And I had my third class medical certificate, which is current. So I'm current, but I challenge anyone who wants to take me up on this, that I believe I might be the oldest pilot in New Jersey that's current and certified. at the age of 90.
Well, we should research that and find out. The state aviation department should be able to tell us, and then have a suitable ceremony to commemorate the event.
Right. So, but I'm still interested, and of course, you and I still have more time for flight, and hopefully you'll be able to be my right seat guy when I get ready for my BFR, and right now I'm getting my feet ready and my back ready and all my pillows ready to get into a 172.
I was at Oshkosh when Steve Whitman delivered one of the airplanes that he built in the 40s to the museum, and he was 94 at that time, I think. That was the same year that, unfortunately, he and his wife died in a crash because he lost the fabric delaminated from his airplane, another airplane he had built. But he was 94, and I remember him coming into doing a flyby. Very impressive. Mm-hmm. No one would have ever even doubted that he could do it at that age. He was doing an excellent job of flying the airplane. So I think that pilots can fly a lot longer than we're given credit for sometimes.
Right.
But we have to be careful.
Oh, yes. You have to be, due diligence.
So of all the airplanes you've flown, I get the feeling that you have a special place for what people would refer to as the lowly Cessna 152.
Right.
Cessna doesn't even make a two-seater anymore, a two-seat trainer.
Right.
But the 152 was a kind of fun airplane, and it was always the most economical to fly of the line and such. Was there any other airplanes that you have a special feeling for that you?
Yes, I do. But on that 152, why I like the 152, you really you have to fly that plane. You become part of that plane. Now on the 172, because of my size, I'm just a little thing, and I'm almost sitting up on the panel because with all those pillows. But with the 152, I was part of that aircraft. But this is one of my goals yet, and I want to learn how to fly a Boeing Stearman. And I might do that by going up to Van Zant in the summer and probably getting my endorsement. I don't know if that can go, but I'd like to do that, to go way back as my remembering at the age of 9 when I had my first airplane ride in a Boeing Stearman. That would be ultimate.
Well, I'm envious because I don't have any time in a Stearman at all.
Uh-huh.
I've never been in one, but I've certainly admired them.
Right.
The Van Zant, I don't. Their operations are pretty much summertime only up there.
Yeah.
And I remember when a fellow by the name of Acer was running the place, and it was a lot of fun to go up there. I try to get up there at least once every summer.
Right.
Yeah.
But they have probably 4 or 5 Stearmans up there, and they are able to, give flying lessons, or get certified for flying.
I hope all of our listeners just heard that. We've got a 90-year-old pilot who is making plans and setting goals for himself, and I think that's wonderful and good and healthy, and that would be the nearest that I know that would have a nearest place that has a Stearman for you to fly. There are lots of places where you can fly a Citabria, even here.
Yeah.
Piper Cubs and all that kind of thing, but a nice round engine airplane that would be the.
Would that be the ultimate? Right.
That's the ultimate for me. Any round engine
right.
is a great thing.
Yeah.
Do any of your children fly, or you?
No. My son did fly with me, but never had the deep interest to take up flying. So maybe when he settles down, who knows? But
and your boyhood friend Dick, did he ever learn to fly? Or?
Dick never. No. In fact, Dick is still alive, and he lives in outside of Worcester. And I talk to him quite frequently. And Dick is 92. Mm-hmm. And we talk about our early days at Grafton Airport, and he's really proud that I've continued to keep my interest in flying. But I got to tell you, flying out of 39N was always a joyful experience, and the wonderful people I've met. Ken and Dick's dad, what a wonderful man he was, and Naomi, she was so disciplined and quite a manager. She ran a wonderful school, and the school still carries on her ideals of great flying and safe flying. So I hope it will continue for a long time here.
Well, we hope to see you here for many years to come as well. And I'm so happy that you joined us today, and we got to talk about your experiences and your love for aviation, which is certainly infectious. And I hope that those of you who are listening in get this good contagion of the aviation flying bug. Thanks a lot, Bill. Really enjoyed having you here this morning.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Princeton Flying School Podcast with Pete Rafle. Our podcasts are recorded at the Princeton Airport and are produced by HG Media. If you enjoyed our show, please share it with your friends. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, or wherever you listen to podcasts.